You wouldn't get any argument from me if you wanted to lead a life of love and understanding. After all, if you wanted to make up the deficit of camaraderie and belonging, your love language could tell you a lot about yourself and the way you like to lead. The mixture of diversity could act as a fundamental strength if you're looking for a differentiating factor, and leading a life of love is more satisfying and rewarding over a long period of time. Because after all, if you have a bit of empathy in your life, then doors of opportunity will open in every aspect which you hold, which makes it important to form relationships. Open up your line of delineation when it comes to acceptance and believing that your individual story has a correlation to the promise of prosperity, hope, and resilience. I'll return to this narrative in just a moment, but first things first, I want to take the opportunity to introduce you to Paul Zolman. He's the international best-selling author of The Role of Love, but the true author of Love is God. So you may be asking yourself, what qualifies Zolman to talk about everything relating to love? The answer to that very question is simple. His childhood and his upbringing, and wanting to make sure others don't experience the opposite of love like he did. And now he's taken his passion for love and forming relationships and developed a new way of implementing the principles of the love languages to improve our ability to love at work, at home, and at play. Zolman says that his method is simple yet extremely effective. So, without further delay, I won't delay the inevitable wisdom of Zolman any longer. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Paul, if you're ready, I'll take a moment, my friend, to welcome you to the program, and I'm excited to talk to you all about love and relationships this afternoon. Great to see you, and thanks for a few minutes, my friend.
Absolutely. Glad to be with you.
Absolutely. Now, Paul, I know that you've developed an innovative way to look at the love languages and how it applies to our life, my friend. So tell me about the role of life and what it's all about, my friend. I'm fascinated.
Thank you, Kevin. It's the role of love actually is a die that I created that I put the icons of love on it. I'm holding it right in front of me now. The die shows two hands together forming a heart. And from that heart, there's a little conversation flyout. That represents the words. So some people like to be loved. These are the love languages that we're talking about, Kevin. So some people like the words. That's when they feel the words or they hear the words, they feel loved. The words like "I love you" or "You look great today" or "You look amazing," anything like that, that they feel loved. The next one, I'll turn the die here. Next one, I have a hand holding an hourglass. That represents time. So hourglasses measure time. When you roll time, it looks like you're putting your phone away. You're paying attention. to what the person is saying. You're listening, you're responding, you're having an interactive conversation, or you're just hanging out with that person. They just like to hang out. That person feels loved when they're hanging out. Now I've turned the cube, and now I've got a looks like a waiter holding a platter. That would represent service. So these are all pictures, Kevin. There are no words on the cube at all. They're just all pictures. This one's holding a platter that represents service. Next, I'll turn the cube, and now I've got a hand holding a present. That represents gifts. So on that day when you roll gifts, that you're looking for opportunities to present somebody with something. It could be a present of service. You could cook a dinner for that person. I mean, you could provide a gift of time. Maybe that person just wants to spend time with you. Gifts is one of those ones that kind of overlaps a lot of the other love languages in that way. And the last one I'll show to you is touch. So these are two hands that are touching each other, and that represents touch. So there's just two instructions, Kevin. You roll the die every day. That's the love language you practice giving away all day that day, all day. So that's what the roll of love is. There are 5 love languages, 6 sides on the die. The last side is a hand holding a question mark. So on that day, it's surprise me. On the surprise me day, you're just watching for opportunities to do random acts of kindness. Now, keep in mind, Kevin, that you're giving love away. This is how you're giving it away all day that day. And I realized in this process that I've been going through of making the transition from having these angry flashes that I had to loving every day, something about someone every single day. And it's changed over a 30-day period. I found that I could learn all 5 love languages to give it away. When I did that, it was easier to see love coming my way. Even though it might not be my primary love language, like Dr. Gary Chapman talks about in his book, The 5 Love Languages, might not be my primary love language, but I can see that they're loving on me. I can respond appropriately in love back to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And Paul, I was fascinated to talk to you today, primarily because, we're living in such divided times, my friend, and I thought your story and the way that you've come up with this innovative way of looking at love and respect is a refreshing way of reminding people to be present. And what I mean by that is, sometimes in life we get so caught up on the way that we want other people to look at life. And I wanted to ask you your perspective on the importance of being present and respectful, and how do you think those two things are interconnected?
I think that they're very interconnected, Kevin. That's a great question too. I thank you for that. As far as being present, I'm back to the hand that's holding the hourglass. You're spending the time. You're setting your phone aside, and I think that there's a lot of people these days that their phone really is their God. They're looking at their phone almost all day long, or they're looking at posts, they're posting, or they're just social media has kind of sucked them in that they can't stop it. It's just kind of almost an addiction that way. And I think that being present means that you set that aside and you're actually with that person, a real person, not the persona that might be portrayed on social media, but you're actually with that real person. And I think that it's important for you to be respectful in that way, be present in that way, be with that real person, and just spend time with them and find out what it's like to be with a real human being rather than always on your social media. It's different. It's definitely different. And it's going to be more realistic for you. You need to develop those skills. I think that we're downsliding on some of those skills of just that social interaction with one another in person.
Yeah, absolutely, Paul. And when we look at the concept of respect and accountability to others, I believe that even if we sort of disagree with someone, it's still important to give them the 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 courtesy of respect, because one of the things that I admire about your story is your evolution to respect as a concept. So talk to me about your idea of respect and what it means to you.
Absolutely. Thank you for that question, Kevin. I think that what I found that I grew up in an angry household, and they're in an angry household, they don't care. Angry people just don't care about the feelings or the lives of other people. And I think that loving is caring. Loving is also respectful. And I think that in that way that we were talking about the word respect, that love is respect. Love is understanding what their feelings might be. And especially, as I rolled the die, it took me 30 days to actually change my habit from being annoyed, stacking another annoyance on top of that, stacking until I flashed. It took me a long time to realize that flashing was not sending out love. And if I was sending out anger, it's like a boomerang, Kevin. That is coming right back at me. Same thing, though, happens with love, as I've found out that as you send love out, especially without any expectation of it coming back, you send it out without that expectation. It's like a slow boomerang that you send it to the moon, and it's going to take a minute for it to come back. You send that love out, and it's just you send that respect out, it's going to take a minute for that to come back. Don't expect it to come back right away. Anger, you can expect to come back right away. There is no respect with anger, and it's not respectful to yourself or to other people to get angry. And once I realized that, I started taking that responsibility. And I think the responsibility and respect are kind of hand in hand there, Kevin. When I took responsibility, I stopped blaming other people for my problems. Blaming other people is not respect. And when you find something that's not of respect, then you think, well, what would be the opposite of that? What would be the opposite of blame? And the opposite of blame would be take that responsibility yourself instead of blaming someone else. If you can blame someone, you don't have to change at all. It's their problem. They got to change if you're blaming them. But if you take responsibility for your own actions, for your own problems, that is a form of respect as well. That you're respecting other people. And I like to recall the love languages were written by Dr. Gary Chapman back in the early 90s. He published the book first in 1992. He's a reverend or a pastor. And as he writes this, he says that these love languages reconcile to the life of Jesus Christ. He touched people. He touched people's eyes so they could see. He touched their ears so that they would hear. He had the gifts of the Spirit. We love his words. He served people and he spent time with people. All the 5 love languages are things that Jesus Christ did. If you remember the Last Supper, Christ was at the table. He says, one of you is going to betray me. And it wasn't just Judas that came forth and said, Lord, is it I? It was all the 12 apostles came forward and said, Lord, is it I? And I think that we need to have, as part of that respect, Kevin, we need to have that humble attitude of asking ourselves the question, Lord, is it I? Is it me in this situation that's causing the problem in the situation? And when we reflect on that and have that humble attitude about ourselves, is it my problem? Take responsibility. Is it my problem? That shows a whole lot of respect for other people. And it's better to assume that it's not their problem, but take care of yourself. That's all. The only thing that you have available is what's in your lane. You can only change yourself. You can't change anybody else. That's their choice. Give them that respect and allow them to change if they choose to change. Quit saying what's wrong with that person and hoping that by pointing out what's wrong with that person, they might change. It's better to love, better to show respect, and kindly encourage them. Maybe you want to try it this way, and just offer them an alternative path rather than point at them and criticize them, saying, "What's wrong with that person?"
Yeah, absolutely. Empathy and understanding goes a long way, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And Paul, just building on your last remarks, I'm curious to ask you, how do you think we can go about creating and cultivating healthier relationships in life that are led by love and understanding? So, how do you think we can cultivate healthier relationships?
Healthier relationships, I think that it starts with you. It starts with me, and it's make it about them. So it starts with you, starts with me, but we make it about them, and it's always about them. It's not really about. We don't get to the point like Dr. Chapman inadvertently created this little point that, well, if I tell you, Kevin, what my love language is, and you tell me what yours is, there's that expectation, there's that duty bound thing that's caters to it, but you get to the point that one of us is not doing it right, and one of us might just get that little whiny voice that says, well, I told you how to love me, how come you're not doing it? And we don't ever want to get to that point, that little pity party there, but we want to develop our own individuality of who we are, who we choose to be. If we choose to love every single day, which the rolling the cube every day will help us choose how we're going to love that day. It almost gives you a purpose, gives you an intention of how you're expecting to give love out that day. And with that intention, Kevin, I think that if our intentions are pure, that we want to send love out, and we're watching for opportunities to love all day long, we're also watching for those people that light up. When they light up, their eyes get wide, and they get all happy. They stand a little taller. When we hit that portion where they light up, we've discovered what maybe their primary or maybe one of their secondary love languages is. We just have to make a memory hook of that and wash, rinse, and repeat. Do that over and over. That's where happiness lies. If we can help other people understand what they like and help them figure out what they like and support them in that regard, I think that the world's going to be a better place. It's really going to just make ourselves better, our families better, our communities better, our state, our nation a whole lot better.
Yeah, absolutely. And Paul, based on your childhood experiences and where you are now in your life, as you reflect back on that time in your life, my friend, how do you think it helped you grow as an individual? And what's the greatest lesson or message you took from that phase in your life?
Well, Kevin, I think that's a great question, and thank you for that. I think that I've got a picture behind me that is a picture of a sunrise. It's a sunrise on a lake that's not far from where I live, and I was out fishing one day on that lake at dawn, and this sunrise came up. And the sunrise has some clouds in it, and it just has just the clouds actually beautify the sunrise. And I think that's the same thing that happens in our life, Kevin, that these adversities, these trials that we go through in our life are similar to the clouds. But once we're out of the cloud and we look back and see that silver lining in the cloud, we can see that we've grown a little bit, that we've matured a little bit, that we've become a little bit better because we went through that cloud. And I think that it's like any training that we have. If we don't have that adversity and training, our muscles are not going to get strong. We have to have that something that pushes back against us, so that we can dig in and we can be the person that we choose to be. Whether it's that loving person or whatever we choose to be, we can use those clouds or those trials or those hard times in our life as a launch pad to be a better person.
Yeah, and Paul, I also wanted to ask you about perseverance, but before I do that, I'll give you a quick story. So, Paul, I'm going to tell you that at the age of 9, my friend, I was told by my primary physician that I wouldn't be able to walk for the duration of my life because I was born with what's called spastic quadriplegia cerebral palsy. So I can't walk without a walker, and I use a wheelchair to get around. And people always tell me that I am an inspirational person, but I always thank them for that compliment. But I always tell them that I'm persistently consistent in living life. And I'll quickly tell you that the turning point in my life, Paul, happened when I was 9 years old. It was the beginning of my fourth year of elementary school, and I had to go back to school the next day after being told by the doctor that I wouldn't walk for the duration of my life. And I credit my middle school principal, Paul, Dr. Carol Crewley, for the changing point in my life because, the day after I found out I couldn't walk, I had to go back to school. And I went to Dr. Crewley's office before I started that school year. And she took me to her office and allowed me to tell her the story, although she knew that was why I was going to the doctor the previous day. And at the end of the story, she looked at me and she said, the only limitations on your life are the artificial ones that you place on yourself personally. So I'm wondering, Paul, about the turning trajectory point in your life and how you view the concept of perseverance.
That's a great question, Kevin, and thank you for that story. I absolutely believe that we really place limitations on ourselves in many ways throughout our life. And sometimes it may be the adversity that we come up to saying, I don't ever want to go through it again. And you may place that limitation. But if we don't learn through that simple adversity, one thing or another, if we don't learn the lessons that adversity has for us, we may see that adversity come back to us again. And unfortunately for yourself, I think that you've pushed through that. And I love how you pushed through it. I love your story, Kevin. I'd love to hear more about your story. And forget about mine. Let's hear about you. And I just absolutely love your story and you sharing that with me. I think that you've got the absolute right attitude, and that doctor that gave you that advice was spot on, saying that if we're placing limitations on anything that we can do and have that shield, we've got to, at some point in time, break through that glass. And I think that there's that you see that in business, you see it in our personal lives, you see it in our family lives. And who would have thought? I thought that when my wife and I agreed, when we first got married, this is my wife. She's not my wife now, but when we first got married, we agreed that we're going to have 6 children. And being an overachiever that I thought I was, we broke through that and actually had 8 children. And so I think that we can do whatever we choose to do, and we can break through those barriers. I would have never thought that I'd be doing podcasts at this point in my life. In fact, podcasts and that sort of thing, it was foreign to me. And over the last 90 days, you're probably about number 100 podcasts that I've done, Kevin, in the last 90 days. And I thank you for that. But it was something just pushing through, getting past that first one. It's a learning curve. And once we're past that learning curves, and I've been through several learning curves in my life, once we're past that learning curve, then our confidence starts to kick in a little bit. We get the confidence that I can do this. And I think that that's the message we want to send, is that I can love, I can be kind, I can be considerate. Just yesterday, I was trying to get on the interstate in my town, and there was plenty of room, but this car that was on the interstate decided they're going to speed up and sandwich less than one car length right behind the car that I was going to slide into the interstate. So I had to put my brakes on. This is an acceleration lane, and I treat those acceleration lanes as an acceleration lane so that you can just move in with the traffic. This car decided they weren't going to be courteous at all. They were going to close the gap between them and the next car, and they weren't having at all me popping in there. And it's just common things like that. The courtesy, we just have to think courteous, think kindness, and then we can do it. And as the more we do that, the easier it becomes. And I imagine with you, Kevin, that thinking that you can walk and doing it and thinking that you can walk again and doing it more, you've now got that thinking muscle as well as the physical muscles that help you continue to do what the doctor said you couldn't do. And I think that's the key.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul, one of the mottos that I live my life by is that everyone's portrait of success is different. It doesn't always have to look aesthetically pleasing as long as it's productive, right?
Well, and I think we come from all different walks of life too. A lot of people look at me and they have absolutely no idea where I came from, because they don't know what's behind me. They don't know what life I've had to live to get to this point. And I think we're judged, and unfortunately judged, by a lot of people where we're at right now versus where we were before and how we came to the point where we're at right now. They don't see the success. They don't see the progress that we've made. And I think it's unfortunate that we cast judgment on other people. This is totally different, Kevin. And this is one of the issues that I have, that judgment was part of the culture of anger that I learned growing up. The culture of anger has a vocabulary all by itself. It has humor and jokes all by itself. And then it has all the put downs all by itself too. Contrast that, or think what could be the opposite of that. And then we're talking about the love languages, the language or the culture of love, and the kind humor, and the thoughtfulness, and the kindnesses that we send out. It's a whole different culture. And so being raised in that culture of anger gave me a huge desire to want to live and be a love language linguist, know the love languages and know how to give it away, know how to receive it, and know how to have kind humor, things that we're just don't put people down, but that help people laugh and enjoy the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Paul, for anyone watching or listening to this today or whenever they listen to it, I'm curious to ask you about, if they have a relationship in their life that they want to cultivate again that may be estranged, what do you think is the key to really starting that conversation of hope again with that person that you may be estranged with?
That's a really good question, Kevin, because I've got some issues with a few children that are estranged myself. So that's a hard question for me, but I'm going to answer as best I can. And what I realized, Kevin, is that just as I mentioned, that if I'm looking at someone else and trying to judge them or trying to criticize them, it's really a futile thing to try to do, because I have no control over their thought process. I have no control over their decision-making process. And so if their decision is to go away and be estranged in that way, that's their decision. And I can't really do much about it except focus, stay in my own lane, focus, and try to be a kinder person, kinder to the next people, so that the possibility of estrangement is really going to be low in the future. I don't know what to do to repair that relationship except to be kind and to be thoughtful. And in fact, in a couple of instances, I don't even have any idea why there's estrangement is out there. I've tried to reach out and I try to be kind and I try to do things from time to time, but they just will not have contact. And it's heartbreaking, it's frustrating, but I still choose in my own mindset to try to be kind to everybody I come in contact with, including those family members that might be so familiar that it might be easy to be unkind to them. I try to be kind to them and try to express love to them in all the ways that I know how. I'm getting better at loving because I'm learning these love languages. I'm getting better at loving because that's what I want to do. That's the legacy that I want to leave. And regardless of this close person, this estranged person's opinion, I still need to focus on who I am or who I want to be. And then hopefully over a period of time and distance heals, is what I've heard. And I think that that's absolutely true. That the time and the distance away from any event that may have offended them, and it would be offended them. I didn't mean to offend anybody, but if as they begin to understand that I didn't mean to offend them, and they come back and I just welcome with open arms and kindness. But you got to wait. You can't push it. I mean, what's that going to look like? Like if you're chasing them, anything you chase, Kevin, I found runs. It runs. So why would you want to chase that? Just wait for them to come back, and and hope and pray, and hopefully it'll happen.
Yeah, there's one thing that we all have, and that's the ability to hold and put together a game plan of our own prosperity. Paul, I always tell people that the only set of expectations you have to reach in life in your own, right? So it's important to keep that in mind, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's right, Kevin.
Yeah, absolutely. And Paul, I am an old communications major, my friend. So I love having communications with people, and I think communication is a big part of establishing any healthy relationship, isn't it? And I'd love your thoughts under that concept as well.
Absolutely. So communication is really key, and I really like I took the survey that Dr. Chapman has in his book that determines what my love language is, and it's just I thought because of growing up that I thought physical touch was appropriate way to show love, and obviously it was in an inappropriate situation, that in the abusive type situation that physical touch was administered. So so as I've grown a little bit older and learned about these different five love languages, I'm finding that I like to not only receive kind words, but I also send them out. And so I think that that ability to love refines itself over a period of time. And I think that ability to love just is becomes not professional, but more refined. And as we refine ourselves over time in keeping doing what we know to be right, it's right to love people. It's right to communicate with people. Those words really are almost this. They're like a bridge to understanding. They really are, and we need those. We need to keep building those bridges of understanding, so for communication purposes only, Kevin. If not for communication purpose, but for loving purposes, just so that we can keep those ties together. We really are not an island. We need to have that interdependence, relying on one another to make it through in this world. We're all social beings.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And Paul, I'm curious to ask you about your motto in life. But before I do that, I'll give you mine in the spirit of sharing and wanting to help other people grow. I live my life through the motto that inclusion, my friend, is the gateway to independence. Because I think when you include people, there's strength in the diversity of perspective. I'm a huge believer in building, bridges of inclusion and acceptance, my friend, because one of the reasons I got into journalism was because I believe that every person deserves a platform to share their story, good, bad, or indifferent. And the good thing about being a journalist, Paul, is that you can be objective, whether you agree or disagree with the person that you're interviewing or conversating with. The good thing is that they're still human and you can still learn from them if you disagree with them. So curious, under that context, what's your motto in life and something that you go back to as your rallying cry in life as well?
Well, Kevin, I'm a Christian and I love the Bible and I love the story of Samuel when he was commanded by God to go to the house of Jesse to ordain the next king from Saul. Saul was the king at the time. Samuel's commanded to go to the house of Jesse to ordain the next king, and he starts at the oldest of Jesse's children, and just the oldest is good looking, everything, and said this might be the king. The Lord tells him no, keep looking, and he just interviews all of Jesse's children until he gets to David and realized now the Spirit of the Lord is upon Samuel. David is to be the next king. And I think that the lesson here for Samuel was that that is the most inclusive uh, uh, and kind of a theme for everybody's life. It is for mine that we look at the heart, that God looks at the heart, and so should we. That we don't look upon the appearance of people like Samuel was at the time. He said all these other good-looking kids that Jesse had, he thought maybe they should be the king because they're so good looking. But David was ruddy and he had rosy cheeks and just it looked different. It did not look like the rest of his brothers. But he was called to be the king. And the Lord Jesus knew his heart and taught Samuel that lesson that the Lord looks on the heart. I believe, Kevin, that for my life, so should we. So should I look on the heart of people. And that's how it's better to have inclusion. Everybody that's walking the earth has a heart. They have the ability to do that. And so that's how I look at people.
Yeah, absolutely. And Paul, I like to think of myself as a hopeful and optimistic person despite my physical restrictions. So I'm curious to ask you, how do you view the concept of hope and resilience, and how do you think we can incorporate hope and resistance or resilience in our life on a more broader scale?
That's a great question, Kevin, and that's probably the hardest question that you've asked so far today. But I think it's very profound that you asked that question. To have hope is to me to have trust, and I think that we're in a society that's so impatient that it's hard to wait for a seed to sprout, and it's hard to trust that when we're planting that seed that it actually is going to grow. If we can wait a minute, it's not, we can't yell at it, say, grow up. It's not going to grow up. You can't be doing that sort of thing, but you have to have patience. You have to nurture those seeds and then they grow. And I think that if we get back to that, we're going to have a better, more hopeful society. And I think that if there's some laws that apply here as it relates to love, that as we're sending love out without any expectation that it's coming back, we're hoping or trusting that at some point in time, that's going to come back to us. And in that hope, we're also believing in the law of the harvest, that if we plant a seed, it should grow and it may provide fruit for us. This is a perfect season for apple season where I'm at. And I just love crispy apples. I wait for this season, the fall of the year, for those crispy apples. I hope that they'll be there, and they usually are. That hope is fulfilled by the evidence of the apple itself. I believe in the same way that as we send love out and have that hope or that trust that it's coming back, that it will come back. And it'll give us that bolster us up, give us that confidence that we'll be resilient in days that we don't see the hope at all. That maybe we're not, no love has come our way that particular day. Hope that it'll come the next day. Have that resilience that it might come the next day. And there's a lot of ways that people say it out there. Some people say karma, that what you send out's coming right back at you. Some people call it the law of attraction. I believe all those laws are this. We're talking about the same thing. We're talking about having hope that whatever we send out, someday the good that we send out, the bad comes back too. But why send out bad? The good that comes out, the good that we send out, we've got to hope and trust that it's coming back. That gives us confidence, have that resilience that we need in our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Paul, you answered the last question on my list when you talked about legacy. So I'll ask my final question this way. I'm a huge believer in creating defining moments of difference in life because, for me, we're all put on this earth, Paul, to make a measurable difference. And if we don't seize the opportunity to make a measurable difference, it's my belief that we all are sort of shortchanging the rest of us because, as I told you earlier, I think there's strength and diversity of perspective. So when you look at your life, Paul, how do you hope your defining moment of difference will be described and defined after your time on Earth has ended, my friend? So how do you want your defining moment of difference to be defined?
That's a great question, Kevin, and I think it's probably different for everybody. But I think for the most part, people want to be remembered in the good light. And I think that there's something that happens when a person passes away that it really shines at a funeral. They're not talking about the horrible things that person did. They're celebrating the life of that person, and I think that everybody wants to have that celebratory time. But for me, it's just leaving a legacy of love that they may, if I've had association with anybody, and I've got a lot of catching up to do because of the anger that was passed down from my grandfather to my father to me, and I'm trying to break those chains of that anger. And so if there's anything that to be remembered for is that I would hope to be remembered that I successfully broke those chains of anger, and that there are more people that felt of my love while they were here on earth and while I was here on earth than anybody that felt of my anger. That anger could be passed around a lot, and rumors could be had, but I want the rumors to be more about love. I want those stories about love to be told after I'm gone and to be cast in concrete, so to speak, that this was the legacy that we have. This is the legacy that my children or my grandchildren would need to live up to. That it's and maybe even make it a whole lot better. I'm not perfect, and I don't even claim to be close to being perfect in the love that I send out, but I'm really trying, and I'm really trying to send it out every single day, all day long to everyone. And so
Yeah,
that's what I'd hope to be remembered as.
yeah, absolutely. And Paul, I really want to sincerely thank you for spending a few minutes with me, just sharing your story of love, resilience, and perseverance, my friend. And finally, I want to ask you if people want to buy the book or get in touch with you personally. What's the best way they can do that?
That's a great question, Kevin. Thank you very much. The best way to get in contact with me and find the cube and find the book, I do have a journal that goes with it. So if you've never kept a journal, or if you've ever tried keeping a journal, what I found is that if I opened up a blank page, my mind went blank. I couldn't remember what I did that day. But this is a journal that's focused. It has a place that you can record what you rolled that day, what opportunities you saw to love in that way, and what you did about those opportunities. It's a great journal. It kind of leads you through. It becomes a love legacy journal. So the journal, the book, and the die, the cube, are all a bundle package that they can find on my website, rolloflove.com, ROLE of love.com. And I kind of did a play on words, Kevin. You rolled ROLL, the die, or roll the cube outside of you. ROLE is the change that happens within you. So ROLE of love.com is where they can find that bundle. It's priced at $29.99 right now, and that's a special. It's discounts all the products to that level. So it's a whole lot less, than even just one therapy session. So this is a very helpful for people to be able to get on with their life, start loving a whole lot more.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul, one of the reasons I started this podcast was I wanted to create more bridges of unity, my friend, because I looked at the world and I told myself there has to be more that brings us together rather than putting us apart. And I think you've really created a unique and creative way to accomplish that goal. So I want to thank you for creating more communities of love, hope, respect, and resilience, my friend, and for joining me this afternoon to engage in conversation. It's most appreciated.
Thank you so much, Kevin. It's been a pleasure to be your guest.